Hi, this is Neha Negandhi for Seen from the Inside radio show. Today our guest is Roland Martin with TV One Network's News One Now.
Yep.
He's also an award-winning journalist. He's worked at CNN. He's an international best-selling author and a ton of other stuff. Thank you for joining us.
No
today.
problem.
We're here at the 2017 Hope Global Forum, and we're going to talk to Mr. Martin about your career and how you got started and all this wonderful stuff. So I want to talk and start with, you went to Yates High School in Houston.
That's Magna School of Communications.
And I wanted, it's been quoted to say that your seeds were fertilized there.
Yeah.
About, your journalistic approach.
Yeah, it was a magna school, so School of Communications. So in Houston, we had a significant number of magna schools. So I chose School of Communications. So we had a television studio, radio studio, newspaper as well. And so I did all three while I was there. So basically, my 4 years of high school was the equivalent of 4 years of college for someone else. And so when I went to college, my 4 years of college was essentially like going through a master's program. So I walked in Texas A&M, and I was sitting in classrooms, and I knew more about communications than most seniors did.
So, but let's talk a little bit more about Yates, because I know it was really important to you, and you've been quoted as saying that your career kind of started there.
Well, that's where everything started. So, it formed the foundation of media. So, and so when you talk about that intro, so again, just like a traditional student, they would say, "Oh, I went to this college and I majored in this." And this is really where I got my footing, where I interned. Whereas for me, being able to shoot video, being able to edit video, being able to record radio, being able to write for the newspaper, being able to write columns, I was doing those things when I was 14, 15, 16, 17. So by the time I was 18 and I go off to college, again, I had 4 years under my belt. I mean, I'd already shot 150, 200 programs. I'd already so the ability to be able to understand the craft, I was already there. And so if you take that knowledge and then you go to college and then coming out, for me, it's always been this constant state of learning. And so I've always, in many ways, been ahead of other folks in terms of whether it's technology, whether it's understanding, like even when it came to convergence. And so I was literally doing convergence in high school. So you're talking about 84 to 87, but then media convergence does not come to fruition professionally until 2000. So here I'm doing it 15 years before it actually happened.
Right.
So when it hit, I was already there. I mean, I remember I covered a trial. Al Lipscomb was on trial, Dallas City Councilman for bribery, and I was covering the trial for a newspaper. I was doing daily radio reports for the newspaper. Had I been, and also when he collapsed in the courtroom, I actually was behind the ambulance going to the hospital. I shot the photos of him being wheeled out of the ambulance and then sent those photos to Associated Press and the newswires. So I'm covering the trial and I'm doing newspaper, radio, also photography. If I had the video camera, I would have been shooting that as well. So that was 2000. So you're talking about, again, other folks were coming around to that a decade later. I was already doing a decade before. And so that was all of that came out of doing the exact same thing as a high school student.
At Yates.
Yep.
Yeah. And so you went to Texas A&M University, and a lot of people didn't expect you to go to Texas A&M.
Well, look, I could have easily. I mean, A&M did not have a strong journalism program, so it wasn't University of Missouri or other programs. But the reality is, my deal is it didn't matter where I went, I was going to get a job in the industry. My brother was at Texas A&M. My sister was going to college after me. It was much easier on my parents to have three of us at one college as opposed to sort of being spread out.
Right.
So it was a lot easier. But again, for me, it wasn't about the journalism program. It was about university. I liked the campus, the people, and so that's one of the reasons why I chose to go there. But again, I thought differently. So what happens is other folks, and again, you got to remember, I wasn't going to a university just starting in the major. I was already there. I'd already had 4 years. And so when I went to Texas A&M, Other students were trying to work on the school newspaper, not me.
Yeah.
I chose to work at the actual local newspaper in town. Other students were trying to work on the campus TV station, not me. I wanted to work at the local television station. I worked at the local radio station. So, because again, my thought process was very simple, and that is, I want to work in an actual, real professional news environment where the deadlines were real.
Right.
The school paper, the school TV station, those are what I call artificial deadlines, because that's more of a laboratory. I didn't want that.
Right.
So again, I was operating on a whole different level. I mean, I was in classrooms and I was doing things. I mean, I had professors who came to me who said, "You are not like them. You are totally different."
But where did that come from, right?
Again, but I already had 4 years of high school. So where it came from was I already did it. So again, they were in a classroom going over things for the first time. I had gone over that stuff 3 years earlier. So I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like, okay, I've already covered this before.
But you are known to be very driven and quite ambitious. And it seems like that stemmed from before even high school. So were you always like that even as a little kid? Like if I were to talk to your mom and dad, what would they say? Would they say that...
It's not a question of driven. I don't think it's driven. What it is simply is when you've decided that this is what I want to do, then you decide I want to be the best at this. So look, my grandmother had a catering business, so I was 7, 8 years old working with our family catering business. Okay, understand when you're that age and you're catering weddings, that's real. So you're talking about having to pack the van, having to do food, having to carry in crates. I mean, you're literally putting on a wedding, and that's somebody's wedding. Those are real responsibilities. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, that's real. You talk about days when we had 3 weddings in one day. So that's work ethic. So when I decided what I wanted to do as a career, then that's what my total focus was on. And that's simply where it came from. And so it's just a matter of when you look. I always say the 4 most powerful words in the world in the Bible: "Thy will be done." When you know what God's will is for you, when you know what you are destined to do, that's what you work on. Last night I was watching Golf Channel. They had a documentary on Jack Nicklaus, and Jack Nicklaus said, "I happened to find my calling in life." Okay, so what did Jack Nicklaus do when he was a kid? He played golf.
Right.
Went to the practice range.
Right.
He putted. He chipped. They had competition. And so, here's part of the problem. Part of our problem is we only talk about these things in terms of athletics. So we see a kid who plays basketball in elementary school, and they're constantly playing, they're working on their game, then they go to junior high school, then they go to AAU, then they go to high school. All of a sudden they might come out of high school and be drafted in the NBA. Okay, so we only look at that as, well, that's just athletics. No, the exact same thing can apply to any other career.
Right.
So when a kid was in high school, working on his game, trying to get better, well, guess what he did? He practiced. He stayed late, took extra shots. Well, take that and apply it to communications. That's what I did.
Right.
It's the exact same thing.
Right.
It's just a different career path.
So did you always know this was your calling? Journalism was always your calling?
Grade. We had to choose. So in the 8th grade, you had to pick which magnet school you want to go to. So I narrowed it down between law enforcement, criminal justice, and school communications.
Well, that's interesting.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So it's just, and again though, it's just, and so when you have a sense of, then I was in the 8th grade. That was a video project that we did. I mean, we had a school newspaper in elementary school, and so I signed up for that. But then in middle school, like I said, we had a video program, and then I worked on that. I had to do a sportscast. I think it was something along the lines of, we were in Greek times, and we had to do a sportscast tied to it. So I did that in the 8th grade. So I'd already touched media, and then that simply sort of piqued my interest. Then I decided to go to school of communications.
So after you graduated college, Texas A&M University, it has been said that you could have gone to really work anywhere. New York Times, the Washington Post.
Yeah, I don't want to work there.
Right, because you've been quoted to say amazing journalism can be done
anywhere.
I
don't want to work there. I mean, I've never had a desire. I've never had a desire to work at the New York Times, the Washington Post, or any of those particular places, because part of the problem is people believe that that's the only places you can do great journalism.
Right.
And I also didn't want to go to those places that limited my opportunities. And sure, you have people who are, but you look at what's happening today, whether you're talking about Wesley Lowery, the Washington Post, Yamiche Sindor, who is now with the New York Times, used to be what you said today. These are some of our younger journalists who are under 30, who've been able to do great things at those ages. But for me, I never ever just felt that that was the be all to end all. So, I mean, even because, and that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is if you think that's it, well, then that's as if wherever you are is irrelevant. So, when I came out, and same thing, I had people who were telling me in college you should only focus on one thing, just newspaper, just television, just radio. And I said, no, I want you to be able to do all three, because I knew then, and I had a very clear sense of where our industry was going. I mean, where we are now, I knew then this is where we were going. So then I wanted to learn all aspects of the business, because there was going to come a day when you had to do all aspects. The people who got caught, the people who lost jobs, the people who couldn't get hired, the people who only had one skill set. There was not to have one skill set, or they had more than one skill set.
So if you knew back then where the industry was going to be now, where do you think the industry is going to go to 10, 15 years from now?
Well, actually what's happening now is what you're seeing is, I mean, obviously you've seen the collapse of newspapers because of classified ads. Right. You're now seeing what you're going to see in the future. You're going to see a lot more digital. I mean, you look at what the networks are doing. You look at what CNN is doing. You look at what the New York Times is doing. You go to the New York Times website. First of all, you no longer have television networks. You no longer have newspapers. You no longer have radio networks. You have
as far as a traditional sense.
No. What I mean by that is you now have media companies. So what that means is you have media companies that are now all encompassing. Mm-hmm. So you can go to the New York Times website and then you can see a video story that they've done.
Right.
I've actually run one of those on the air. You go to television networks, you go to a CNN, you go to MSNBC, now all of a sudden you're seeing this whole drive with digital. You look at broadband. So what's happening now is we've grown up having that television, having that signal come in. Now, of course, with proliferation of broadband, now now you're driving digital. So you're reaching a point where you're going to see even more of that, where literally what you see now as a CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, you're going to see whole-scale digital networks that are solely digital. They're digital first and not broadcast first.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, that's where we're going.
That's where we're going.
You already see it. So if you look at what the Young Turks are doing, it's exactly what that is.
Yes.
When you look at, there's a new site called Crackle, which is a business site, that's a business network that's targeted to millennials. So they have a television show that's traditional, as a traditional television show, but they're on Roku and they're on some other devices. And so you're going to see full-scale digital networks that are going to have the same programming. So a few years ago, when Huffington Post launched Huffington Post Live, right. And then they shuttered that. So they shuttered that, then to go to just doing different stories, different video, and being able to kick that out. I think we're going to go back to that. We're going to go back to where you literally are going to have live programming, live shows that are solely digital. They have nothing to do with a cable network or a broadcast network, where you literally can create your own digital network. Cost of the barrier to entry is going to be a lot cheaper. You don't have to deal with your traditional costs. You don't have to deal with your traditional newsrooms. That's actually where we're going. That's where we're going to see it next.
You recently hosted a show about Hollywood actors and actresses using
Mm-hmm.
that platform to create social good. And I wanted to talk about, you have a wonderful platform, and you and you're very widely known and recognized. And if you could use your platform that you have to create social good, what would you?
No, actually, I already do. So one of the areas where I've stepped outside of my role as a journalist is on the issue of school choice, charter schools, vouchers, things along those lines. And so I have an initiative called School Choice is a Black Choice, where I literally travel around the country advocating on behalf of school choice. And so, and then that also merges with media, because I did a documentary down in New Orleans about the New Orleans charter school experience. We're working on a couple of the projects as well, so that's happening. One of the other areas we're going to be launching in 2018 is going to be different also, deals with financial literacy, but different. So, for instance, the average Brandeis University did their study. The average white family has $110,000 in wealth. The average black family has $5,000. And so I've had all these people come on my show talking about how we need to save, we need to invest, but they don't have an actual program that goes with it. It was just the concept. Right. So we're going to be doing a thing in 2018 where literally the goal is to get 100,000 African Americans to sign up for it, and the whole goal is to get 100,000 African Americans to save $1,000 in a year. You save and invest in $100 million. So I'm calling this a $100 million initiative. And so that's one of the things we're working on next. And again, using that platform of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, YouTube, Tumblr, Flickr, using all of those platforms sort of drive that messaging, plus television show and radio show.
I think that is wonderful. We have time for one last question. What do you think why is it important for others to use their platform to create social good?
Why have it? No, use it. What's the whole point of having influence if you don't use it? If it's only one way? See, and so, okay, so you have some people who have 10 million followers. What are they doing with it? Right. Okay, sure, they're coming to you, they're looking at your music, or they're looking at your products, but what are you doing with it? What are you saying? That to me is different. So, we talked to Harry Belafonte when he says that he is an activist first, artist second, in the tradition of Paul Robeson. Then you understand that. When you look at Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, then you look at Dick Gregory, you understand that. So what's the point of having a platform and it's only about what you do and how you can help others? That to me makes no sense.
But it should be a two-way street.
Yeah.
You give and then you receive.
No sense in building it and do nothing with it.
Right. Ambassador Andrew Young said on recently on our show, if you have it, pass on the blessings. Right?
There you go.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful way to say give back and create social good, because you have the platform. So use it, like you said. Why? If you have it, use it.
Yep.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Roland Martin from TV One Network. Thank you so much.